Hey guys, welcome to one of our traditional videos. I'm really happy to be back with this format. And yeah, we're back. That does not mean that we're gonna stop the mini premium courses. Those are gonna still keep going, but we heard you. We heard you loud and clear. And I do miss you guys as well. So we're gonna be back. We're gonna be using this format again. We're gonna have a couple of more constant videos. I'm gonna try to do at least 2 videos per week. I can't do 1 video daily anymore, unfortunately, or fortunately. The work that I'm doing right now at the studio is really demanding, so my time is really limited, and of course I need to spend time with my family, my wife, my little kid, with my friends, my hobbies, all that stuff, right? It's important that we have a balanced life, and I'm trying to be an example of that. So therefore, I'm only gonna be able to do a couple of these videos per week. But don't worry, we're gonna be seeing each other in this format. And today, we're gonna be talking about a topic that a lot of you requested yesterday on the video that I was asking for some help about more topics to show you. Now, this is a topic that we've talked about before. Well, where is this thing? There we go. But that's not the monitor. It's this one. There we go. And this is UBs, okay? So I did a video about demystifying UBs a couple of months ago. I know a lot of people saw it, and it's one of our top videos from that time. But we're gonna go over it again, and we're gonna go a little bit more in depth. I'm gonna show you several different examples of elements that you might find in your assets, and the kind of things that you need to look for whenever you're doing your UBs, okay? So, first of all, what the hell are UVs? For those of you that are completely new to the 3D world and are struggling with UVs, what are UVs? Well, hopefully every single person, every single one of you has seen a globe, right? Like one of these maps that we have from the world. Hopefully we don't start any sort of a war on the comments about whether the earth is flat or round. But yeah, everyone has seen one of these globes, right? And we also have seen maps of the world, like this one's right here. Well, here's the thing. We, in this spherical world that we live in, it is very difficult to map this spherical shape into a 2D plane, because when we transfer something from 3 dimensions into 2 dimensions, we get distortions and we get some errors. And the easiest way I can show you this is by a drawing. I actually learned this really recently. Someone asked on Reddit actually about, like, I knew about this, but they gave a very clear answer and was like, yeah, that's a perfectly good way to explain the concept. And they were asking, how is it possible for you to have distortion on the map when the map is just like a visual representation of all of the countries, right? Well, here's the deal. We know from traditional math in 2D view, right, that a triangle cannot have two 90-degree angles, right? So when we have this kind of triangle, I always forget what the name is. In Spanish, we call it recto, which is like straight triangle. When you have a triangle that has a 90-degree angle, you cannot have another 90-degree angle, because from like math theory and stuff, we know that the inner angles of any sort of a triangle will add up to 180 degrees. Well, if you were in the North Pole, imagine you're this guy right here in the North Pole, and you walk, let's say, 100 kilometers down towards the south, right? So you will be doing this, south, and then you do another 100 kilometers towards the east, like this, and then you do 100 kilometers towards the north, like this. What's going to happen is you have now walked 300 kilometers, and you actually have created three 90-degree angles on your element right here. So you did like a perfectly straight 90-degree side, or turn to the side or to the top or towards the bottom, and you still end up at the same point. So what happened here is you walked in this sort of like triangular shape, but on a 3-dimensional shape, this thing is deformed, and we get this sort of like different effect, right? So that's what's happening. Whenever we're transferring something from the 3D world to the 2D world, we lose certain information. And when we lose that information, we get distortion. Okay, now why is this important with UVs? Because that's the main thing about UVs. If anyone asks you, what is a UV? A UV is a 2D representation of a 3D object. That's it. It's the way you would map the coordinates of a 3D object into a plane, so that you can project textures onto it and like line them up and stuff. Now, the example everyone uses, it's like the Kinder egg, or any sort of like chocolate that has a 3D shape, like the ones from Easter, like a little Santa Claus from Christmas, stuff like that. This is a 3D object, but when designers are designing the stickers or the envelope for these things, they won't design it on Substance Painter, right? They will design it on probably like Illustrator or something. And then when this thing gets printed out and folded on top of the object, it matches perfectly with what they were intending to show, right? Like the brand and the name and everything. So that's pretty much what 3D UVing is. We are gonna transfer. We're gonna find the shape that best represents our 3D object into a 2D view. That's the main like idea of the 3D world. Now, one of the cool things about Maya is that all of the shapes, all of the basic shapes that you create already have proper UVs. Back in the day, we would use a UV like texture map to see whether or not our UVs were matching perfectly or not. Right now, we can use another one, but I actually do like using this sort of like UV grid. There was one from Modo, this one right here. This textures, these were very famous back in the day. You would see this kind of things in everyone's portfolios, and they were really cool because you could see like the coordinates and everything. I personally liked the Modo UB. They call it checker. I really like the Modo one because it was very pretty. This one right here. Oh, make sure we get the proper one. There we go. This one. So I'm gonna save this image. I'm gonna save it on the desktop for now, just to be a little bit faster now. And what we can do is we can just right click, assign a new material to our objects, just assign a traditional like Lambert material. And on the nodes over here on the color node, we can assign a file node. And if we go into the desktop and we get that that one right there, where is it? Ah, I've had that happen before. Let's download this one. There seems to be like some sort of like error from that specific site. There we go. So we get this one right here, and that's it. Now I press number 6 here on my keyboard so that we can see the images, and you can see how this UV is being projected on top of all of the objects. So by default, if we go into the UV editor window, you're gonna find the way that this thing is being projected. Maya now has its own UV checker, which is this one right here. The one thing I don't like about this one is that it doesn't have colors, so it's not as pretty, and sometimes you might not see the proper like orientation of your UV. So that's why the Modo one looks and works pretty well. And there we go. So as you can see, every single like UV element from our objects will live in this thing called the 0 to 1 UV space. There's another a little bit more advanced method called UDIMs. We might talk about that one later. But this one, this specific like basic method that you see right here, this is just a normal way to UV an object, okay? And as you can see, my sphere is trying to use as much space from this 0 to 1 coordinate to get as much resolution as possible. We do get a couple of errors, a couple of like unfortunate problems that we get when we transfer something from the 3D world to the 2D world. And one of those is, of course, the poles. So as you can see here on the poles, this pole right here looks really bad. There's a lot of stitching, there's a lot of stretching. We also see some deformation right here, which is exactly what happens on the map itself. Like if you guys have seen, it's called the Mercator projection. That's the map that we all know, that we see pretty much everywhere. And the problem with the Mercator projection, this one right here, is that even though it looks very nice and very aesthetic, the proportions are completely wrong. So for instance, in my case, Mexico, it's way smaller than it actually is. And Africa is super small compared to like North America and Europe. Why? Because as we get closer to the equator right here, things get distorted the most. One of the best ones that we can get, there's a very nice map projection proper proportions. It's this like very like elongated and distorted map, but it shows you the proper proportions. There we go, this one right here. So this is a proportionally accurate map of the world, and as you can see, Africa now has the proper size. Mexico is really big as well. India, of course. So yeah, this is the way that the actual proportions of our map would be. However, it's very difficult to read, right? It's not as aesthetic, it doesn't look as nice. This is kind of like the best in between because you get like a nice way to see it and at the same time kind of nice proportions. And people have tried doing this in so many different ways, like so many mathematical options to try and get the most or the closest shape possible, but it's just mathematically impossible to project something from the 3D world to the 2D world without losing some information, because that's just the way it is. So the sphere right here, what this is doing, as you can see, it's creating this element right here. The cube is, that one's an easy one, because as you can see for the cube, one of the cool things about the cube is that it's very uniform. So we can see all of the faces sharing a very nice effect here with all of the elements. The one thing that we have with the cube that's a little bit unfortunate, we have this cuts right here, and that's another one of the things that you can't avoid having when you're working with UVs. You will have seams. Seams is where you cut the UV, and when the UV goes into a different direction. So imagine we had like a word here that reads like top to bottom, and it says something like UV maps. It would cut right here, right? And you would need to like really find a way to make it match, and that's an art on itself. But it's possible. It's possible to hide those seams as close as possible. Now, one problem that we have right here with this one, with the cylinder, is the fact that, as you can see, the cylinder, even though it has some nice UVs, like the caps are very nicely UV'd and the sides are UV'd as well, these sides right here, I right-click here and selected the UV shell, they're not using as much space as they could. And that's one of the things that we always need to take into account whenever we're doing UVs. We need to maximize the space that we're using, because the more space that we can get from this 0 to 1 portion, the better resolution we're going to have. So as you can see here, we're getting some very pixelated results because we're using just a very small fraction of the image right here. If we were to scale this and push this all the way to the border like this, now as you can see, we're using way more resolution, and we're going to be able to have a nicer texture. So the cylinders unfortunately have a really bad basic UV set, but as you can see, it once we fix that specific proportion, then we're good to go. So everything would be amazing if we could just like roll with this, right? And be like, oh yeah, perfect, every single object automatically has UVs, but unfortunately that's not the way it works in the 3D world. And I've prepared a couple of examples here for you to play around with. I'm actually going to update, or I'm going to, let me save the scene for you guys so that you can share. It's going to be on the folder down here on the description. There's a little like Google Drive folder where I upload everything. So I'm going to call this UV exercise, and you guys are going to be able to do this. So the way this works is very easy. I'm actually going to save a new one, call this finish, so that I upload the correct one. So if you take a look at this dice right here, I'm actually going to smooth it out. I'm going to say mesh smooth once. You're going to have to do this as well. Let's just do it once so that we get like cleaner effects. And what you can see is that the UV, I mean, it's not bad, but if I were to place this assigned material and assign the Lambert 3, which is the one that we just created, we're going to start seeing some errors. Even if we press number 3, there's a couple of errors. For instance, the little dots right here have more resolution than the rest of the cube, and it just doesn't look as good. Now, this cube originally had its own UV, and when we created this model, it keeps the UV unless we delete it, which is what we're going to do. I have a specific way of working with UVs, and this is a technique that I've used for the past 11 years, and I've never had any issues with any clients or any work or anything. It just works. It might not be the best. There might be other ways to do it, but this one works really well, so I'm going to share it with you guys. And here we go. So the first step on my, I call this the 5 steps to perfect UVs. And the first step of my 5-step guide is go to UV and delete the UVs. This is going to make sure that you don't have any like contaminated UVs, and that things are going to be working as nice as possible. The second thing is we need to get a new UV. We need to have some sort of base to work with. And the easiest way to do that is using something called a camera-based projection. There's a couple of projections. I'm going to talk about some of them with the next examples. But here in the UV, if I go to the to the camera-based projection, this one right here, what's going to happen is I'm going to take a picture from where my camera is seeing the object. And since I'm in this sort of like top 3/4 view, I'm going to take a picture down into the object. And as you can see, it looks like this on the UV map. Now, it might look like this is working. As you can see, this is a perfectly nice effect. And if you were doing a render where this is going to be the only view that the camera is going to have, it actually works perfectly fine. This is a trick that they use a lot for like matte paintings and stuff. You have like a CD on the background. You just take a planar mapping of all of the geometry and you just paint on top of those UV maps and then just project it, and that's fine because the camera will never move from that specific point, and that's all you're going to see. But usually, you're going to be seeing the objects from different views. So if we move this around, you're going to see that our object or our UV goes completely bonkers. Like, this is not going to work at all. So how do we fix this? Well, second step, planar mapping. Third step, 3D cut tool. We're gonna go into our UV, and we're gonna use our 3D cut and sew UV tool, which is like a combo tool that has both options. We can cut UVs and we can sew UVs. We can join UVs together, and we need to decide how we're gonna be cutting this cube. Now, one very easy way to do this, each face could be its own element and that's it, but cubes have this very particular way of cutting. It's kind of like a cross. So what we can do is we can go to this corner right here and just double click, and then this corner right here, double click, and then we go around like this, and then we skip this one. We go up here, down here, and there we go. So as you can see, these faces that we have on the back, what I want them to do is I want them to unfold like this, and then the faces that are going on the top, they're gonna unfold like this, okay? Probably most of you, or hopefully everyone, when they were in kindergarten, they did this like cube assemble, right? Like this thing right here, where you cut and you have like this little like flaps, and then you just use like a stick glue to like glue everything together. It's the same deal. Like we're converting, we're creating this sort of shape so that when we cut and when we unfold everything, it just becomes flat. Okay, so we've successfully created all of these lines. As you can see right there, the lines are going in a nice direction. It's like this sort of like weird flap going around the cube. And that will be the fourth step. So first step was delete the UVs. Second step was camera-based mapping. Sorry, this is the third step. Third step is cut your UV seams. And then the fourth step is unfold. We're going to unfold this thing so that it just like bloop, flattens everything into our image. And you guys are super, super lucky, because when I was learning 3D, unfold did not exist. So you had to do this manually, and it was the worst. It was one of the most annoying things to do back in the day. But for you, it's completely free and it's completely automatic. So the way to do this, first of all, you need to make sure that your Unfold 3D element is turned on. So you're going to go to Windows, Settings and Preferences, Plugin Manager, and you are going to look for Unfold. It usually is turned on, and it is usually set to auto load. So just make sure that it is set to that specific element, and you're going to be fine. You're going to go here to your UV editor. By the way, the UV editor is up here, UV editor. And when you select the object, like I'm doing right now, you're going to see the UV that we just created and the UV seams that we just cut it. They should look like a little bit more highlighted, like we will have right there. You're going to right click, select all of the UV shells or UVs, whatever, just select everything that you want to unfold. And there's two ways to do it. You can go to modify and hit unfold, or use the shortcut that I prefer, which is Control U. And as you can see, we have successfully unfolded our element. It looks like this sort of like cross. Instead of like the cross, we get this sort of like T-shape. That's fine. It's still gonna work perfectly fine. Now, the only thing we need to do is we need to go back to one of the first rules that we talked about when we're talking about UVs. We need to bring this back to the 0 to 1 coordinates. We don't want this thing to be going out into other UDIM tiles. So I'm gonna select this guy, and easiest way to do this, this is what an easy one because it's just a piece. Just scale this, rotate this, and now kind of like following the Tetris effect, we're just gonna scale this and make sure we utilize as much of the space as possible. I usually like to move things to the side so that we get more free space over here. And imagine if we had like another die, or if we had another object in the scene, we could merge some of the UVs together. We're gonna do something similar with this other examples that we have right here. But that's it. That is it. So first step, delete the UVs. Second step, do a camera-based projection to get a base to start working with. Third step, cut the UV seams where you are going to be needing them. Fourth step, unfold. And fifth step, you're going to lay them out. You're going to just like place them specifically where they need to be. And now that's pretty much it. Our object is completely ready. So as you can see, the UV looks really nice, and we can bring this into Substance Painter, for instance, and just texture it so that everything looks as nice as possible. That will be the way to do it, okay? So that's the die. Let's go for the next one. So for the next one, I have this object right here, which if you have been in any of my classes, it's one of like my signature models that I teach everyone to do. And this barrel is made out of two elements. We have the base barrel, and then we have the rings. But the steps happen exactly the same. So I'm going to grab both objects right here, and I'm going to say UV, and I'm going to do a camera-based projection. Or rather, let's do the steps properly. So UV, delete UVs first, select both UV and camera-based projection. There we go. Now, I'm not going to use the Modo checkerboard just yet because I want to show you something else that Maya has. I'm going to isolate the first barrel right here. And since we have the UV element here like selected, there's this visual bug with Maya. Sometimes when you open the UV, you won't see the UV. sometimes, just right click and go into UV and you're gonna see it. It's just like a visual bug or something. It kind of disappears. But here's what I'm gonna do. If I go UV and I say 3D cut and sew UV tool, and I go over here and turn this second button on, you're gonna get this sort of like pink color. It's usually pink or some sort of like a pastel looking color. And the cool thing about this one is when you cut your edge loops, when we decide where we want to cut our elements, they're actually going to change colors whenever you get different islands, different UV islands. So for this barrel, we need to find a way to cut this properly. You guys remember the cylinder that we saw at the beginning? Well, that's exactly the way we want to cut it. Whenever you have a cylindrical shaped object, the best way to cut those sort of objects is cap, and going across, like a cylindrical mapping across. So right here, what I can do is I can go to the corner right there. As you can see, it changes color. I can go to the lower corner right there. It changes color as well. It's a different color. And then usually going to the back of the object, which would be back here, I'm just going to double click and there we go. Now we can go over here, select all of the UVs and just hit again, Control U to unfold. And look at this. It looks really, really good, right? Now, the problem with this one is we're going to need a little bit more manual to make this work in order so that it fits the inner like 0 to 1 section. Whenever you're scaling a UV or the UV of an object, you always want to make sure that you scale it at the same time, all of the pieces at the same time, because one very common mistake is people will scale certain areas of the object a little bit more than others, and that will give you different densities on the texture that you're having. A couple of people mentioned something called texels. It's a little bit more advanced. It's a concept that we use in games. I'll talk about that one probably in another video. But you definitely want to make sure that all of the pieces of your object have or share the same density in your UV maps. Otherwise, textures might look slightly wrong. Like imagine if this thing was really, really big, just because we wanted more space right here. What's going to happen is, let's turn this like grid on. What's going to happen is one section of the element, like this section down here, is going to have a lot of resolution. It's going to look really high quality HD, and everything else is not going to look as nice. So just be mindful of that one, okay? Now, let's go back here. There we go. So now that we have this, we have a very, very massive problem. And the problem is that, as you can see, this barrel on the front, it looks really, really good. But as we go towards the back, we get a more and more and more distortion. And if we were to map something like, let's say, like a wood texture on these things, the wood beams on this area would all like skewed in a very, very weird way. So that means that our cuts were probably not as efficient, or maybe your projections were not as efficient. So I'm going to show you a trick here that you can use for cylindrical objects like this one to get some better projections. So let's start over. I'm going to say UV, delete UVs, UV, camera-based projection. Let's turn this off and let's assign the Lambert 3, which is, in my case, the Modo thing. If you're using this file, you might not have the Modo. You need to download it again and just assign it back to the color because it's just going to be lost. I'm going to include the image, but you just need to make sure that it's properly connected. Now I'm going to go UV, 3D cut and UV tool, and instead of cutting in here where it's going to create like this very weird like distortion on the lip of the barrel, I'm actually going to cut up here on this like edge. Same thing down here on the edge. And we're still going to cut on the backside like this. Now, if we do this unfold again, if I do Control U again, it's going to be very similar. We're still going to have that distortion. It doesn't really change that much. We did manage to like minimize it a little bit more because we got rid of that little thing that goes on top of the barrel. But as you can see, we still get that distortion. And if we were, again, to map like a cylindrical or like a, yeah, just like a basic like wood texture, this would look really, really bad. So for simple objects like this, one option is to go here to the UVs, select these UVs, and over here we actually have some tools we can use to play around and make our UVs a lot better. One of those tools is here on the Align and Snap. We can just say, no, where is it? Transform. I just forgot where this thing was. There's one option that's going to straighten. Straighten is the one that I'm looking for. Straighten. Where is it? Unfold. There we go. On the unfold sections, you're going to find this straighten UVs option. And as long as you don't have a lot of UVs, right here, we can straighten the UVs. And it's going to do a very good job. This one really works for things like barrels, telephone poles, soda cans, anything that's just like small object. And when you have like this really clean cut, it really, really helps. Now, if we had kept the thing that was going around or towards the top of the barrel, that would have made it a lot more difficult to use this straighten because we have extra faces. And then it really doesn't doesn't know how to do it. But for this one, as you can see, it works really well. So now it's just a matter of making this thing as big as we can here, making sure it fits, and then just moving some of this. Because one of the other rules about UVs is you don't want to have overlapping UVs. Not always. Remember, all of the 3D rules they depend on a lot of factors, right? But more often than not, you don't want to have any UVs that are like matching each other. Now, after that one, we now have the rings, and the rings are fairly simple. And here's where I always tell my students, work smart, not hard, right? So I can see that these 3 rings right here are exactly the same as the 3 rings down here. So why not just delete half of them so that we don't have to do as much work, do the UVs for this one, and then we just duplicate. That's it. So I'm just gonna select this guys right here. Again, 5 steps. First step, UV, and we do a delete UVs, and then UV, camera-based projection, and then we go UV, 3D cut and sew UV tool. Now, this ones are slightly different. In the barrel, when you have a cylindrical shape, you're usually going to go for the cap, and then across, and then the other cap on the bottom, right? That's usually the way we do it. For this specific one, we're actually going to go across, and then one line hidden here on the inside, because rings have this very interesting feature where if you imagine like a donut and you split the donut on one section, like just cut it, and then you cut a line through that section, it goes all the way into a square. We can unfold it all the way onto a square. This is one of those shapes that doesn't distort as much, and it's very, very cool. Like Taurus, it's like a very magical 3D shape. So now we go here and we just say Control U. You're gonna see this thing right here. Now, here's where I'm going to show you a new tool that we're going to be using, which is called the layout tool. If you select your object right here and say modify, and you go to this option called the layout, instead of having to manually select how we want to like accommodate all of these elements, we can just lay them out with this specific tool. Couple of things that you need to keep in mind. Make sure you use this pack together option so that they all share the same UV space. Make sure you turn on this shell pre-scaling to preserve 3D ratios so that the size of the shell matches the size of your 3D object. And this shell pre-rotation, it's up to you whether you want things to be flat, horizontal, or straight vertical. And that's it. There's a couple of more advanced options, but for now, this one works perfectly fine. And as you can see, we get this. And if we take a look at the UVs, look at those. Beautiful. Now, I'm just going to duplicate this guy, rotate this 90 degrees or 180 degrees, and we have 2 elements that are sharing the UVs. Let's combine them. And what we can do here is select all of the UVs. You can see the colors are a little bit stronger. That's because the UVs are overlapping. Only thing we need to do, Control L, and that's going to lay them out very nicely right here. And that's exactly what we can do with the barrel as well. Even if they're different objects, like in this case, the barrel, we can grab everything and just hit Control L, and it's going to automatically, as you can see, pack them into a single UV section so that we can have all of them in the same element and sharing the same density, which is really, really important. As you can see, the level of like density that we have for all of this guys is exactly the same. So no part has like a more higher resolution element than the other. And as you can see, they're looking pretty cool. And yeah, that's it. That's the barrel. So 2 elements down. Let's go for the next one. So this one's a little bit more special because this one is a character. And characters have their cuts, or the cuts that you usually do for a character are a little bit different than the ones that you would do for an object. Now, since characters are more organic, you want to follow the same rules that we were talking about with seams. You want to hide the seams. That's usually what you're going to do. It's still the same 5 steps. So we're going to say UV, delete UVs, and then UV, camera base mapping. There we go. And now we can jump UV and say 3D cut and sew UV tool. So the best way I can tell you how to do UVs, and it's one of the easiest ones to do, just think about how cloth is made. And wherever you see a seam on cloth, well, I got some food in here, what the hell. Whenever you see some seams on the cloth, that's where you usually want to place your element. So for instance, on the shirt, we're usually going to have a seam right here at the armpit, right? So as you can see, when I double click there, there's actually an edge loop that goes all the way around. I actually don't want that edge loop. I'm going to grab one edge loop after that one. So this one right here. Actually, this one. Oh, you know what? This model that I have right here, actually, and now I remember, this one I did in the ZBrush. And the retopology is not perfect, but just bear with me. So for instance, here, I really like this edge loop right here. You can press Control to erase an edge loop that you drew. Let's see if this one works out. Okay, this one seems to be working a little bit better. There we go. So see that little star right there under the armpit? That's the one that we're going to be using. And that way we create a very nice, like round looking loop going around the element. Now here, Now, as you can see, the arm starts resembling a cylinder. So how do we cut cylinders? Cap, cap, and then across, right? So for this one, the cap would be down here, like right about there. And I'm definitely going to go to the underside of the character because I want to hide the seam. So that's a perfect place for that one. Let's go to this one. So double click there, double click there. The cap is going to be this one. And then on the underside, this is where we're going to go. And as you can see now, the arms have been properly cut into this sort of like cylindrical shape. Now for the chest, we're actually going to follow this line down here. Well, there's a big cap over here, so let's just get that one done with. And then when you follow a shirt, we usually have these lines across our sides. So that's where we're going to go. One line right here and one line right here. And now we need to cut the neck, of course. So for the neck, I'm going to try to, again, hide this line. So I'm going to go as high as possible while we still get this sort of like line going across. You can see that sometimes the line will not flow perfectly. If you want this to flow perfectly, we could use that one. I mean, it's not bad, but the seam line is going to be a little bit more obvious. So if I want to hide this, I'm probably going to go a little bit higher, even if I have to do a little bit more work over here. So from this star right here, I'm going to go to this other one. Again, double click. And then it's just a matter of bridging this one right here. Now, see how I got a lot of like wonky looking lines? If you don't want to deal with that, another quick way to do this is just go into edge mode. Select the edges that you want to select, like this ones, and then just go UV and cut UVs. That's like a manual way of doing it. So there we go. As you can see, that one's working. Symmetry does work, by the way. So if you turn on symmetry over here and you're doing one side of the character and your character is symmetrical, of course, you're going to be able to do it. Another thing you can do is just draw the lines, and then with control, just like literally draw on top of the extra elements, and that should do it. Careful there. Or just be very careful when drawing the line, because Maya is crazy and tries to go other ways. There we go. So as you can see, now if we take a look at the 3D cut and UV tool, it's like a line that's going across the character. Usually the eyes, you want to like have like the inner section of the eyes. I don't remember if I had like a proper edge loop here for this one. It kind of seems like I did. Like if I remember correctly, I kind of did. It's not perfect though. Just gonna, here's where I'm definitely gonna use symmetry. So I'm gonna turn symmetry object X on so that we can do it both sides at the same time. And I can go there, or there, and then there, and then there, and see how it kind of like wants to go over there. I'm just gonna like help it like close right there until both lines meet like that. There we go. That works. There's not enough depth in the nose, so we don't need it. But if you had like depth on the nose, or if you actually model the mouth, you'll probably cut around the mouth as well. The ears are like one of the other pieces of geometry that you might want to cut. So for instance, I can go probably on this one right there, and then just go on, let's see where this edge loop flows. Again, this is not the most perfect edge loop for the character. We could do a way better job, but it's gonna work. There we go. So now we've successfully cut the ear from the head. That's gonna help with the deformation, because that way the ear is gonna unfold on its own. And there are very important cut that you want to have is this sort of like luchador. I call it the luchador line, where you go here on the top of the head and you just go all the way to the back. As you can see, if I try to double click, it's gonna go all the way there. So this is where I would probably just like do this and then deselect all the edges that I don't want. You can see that's the line, so that's where it's gonna stop right there. Same here on the front, because it's really gonna be at the beginning of the hairline, so roughly about there. And again, UV and cut UV edges. There we go. So UV editor, we grab this whole thing, Control U to unfold, and there we go. We missed one thing though. We missed the upper cuts on the torso. So right now we did do this seam right here, but we need one extra seam on this side over here. I personally like doing it on the back of the character. It will always depend, of course, on the project, but see this like nice little like point that we have there? That's a really nice way to do this, because when you see it from the front, the line's gonna be hidden a little bit more towards the back like that. So it really works, I would say. And now we can go again to the UV editor, grab everything here, say Control U, And there we go. Now grab everything again. Control L to lay this out, and that's it. We are wasting a little bit of space. We can of course play around with the scales and make sure that we get as much space as possible, maybe rotate a couple of things here and there, but this is a perfectly fine UV to work with inside of Substance or inside of any texturing software, so we can get this guy to work. And now we're gonna go to the final one. This is the final exercise that I wanted to show you because it's a little bit more complex, and as you can see, this piece is made out of different elements. Now here's here's the quiz or the exam that I want to give you guys, because I want you guys to use this one as an example, and I want you guys to do it yourselves. I don't want to show you how to do it. That way you're gonna know whether or not you learn all of the things that we just went over in this specific series. So if we take a look at the UV editor, you're gonna see that, look at this super nicely packed UV. I did not use any secret techniques other than the ones that I showed you. I deleted the UVs, I created a planar mapping, and then I started cutting all of the different things. I'm going to show you one little trick right here because this one's important. I did not mention it. For all of the main body of the hydrant and all of these big pieces that you see right here, it's the exact same deal. I just saw which ones were like cylinders, which ones were like cubes, and I just tried dividing them as nicely as possible. But for this guys right here, this upper guys, how do you think we did this, guys? This elements right here. Think about this. I'm not going to do it because I really want you guys to try this yourselves and see if you can do it. This object is of course going to be there. So just go UV, delete the UVs, and try to get them as close as possible. You can even duplicate this object and do it on the other one and see how close you can get. But the way we did it is I deleted. You can decombine, you can go mesh, separate this object into different pieces. I pretty much just did the UV for one piece first, with the rings of the element, and I duplicated the special around the element once the UVs were done. Because imagine having to do this 12 times for each, a bolt right here, and then another 24 times over here. That would be just a waste of time. So you do it once, and then you duplicate the special. You do it once, and then you duplicate the special. And after that, you unfold, you lay out, and you should have these very nice UVs. There we go, guys. Give it a shot. Give it a try. Again, I'm really happy to be back. And yeah, thank you very much. Before I leave, remember, I'm going to give you one more announcement, but I definitely need to include the promotion that we have, of course, for our premium courses, which is a Skillshare. So let's go. Hey guys, Abraham here. I just wanted to remind you guys that we upload all of our courses to Skillshare. Skillshare is this amazing site where you can access a ton of different content to learn, improve, and grow as an artist. We have all of our courses available to watch and learn from right now in Skillshare. You can check the description down here, and Skillshare is offering 1 free month trial to their premium membership. With this membership, you're going to be able to access all of our courses and watch and learn all of the amazing things that we cover with all of the softwares. So, what are you waiting for? Check Skillshare down here below. So that's it, guys. I'm gonna be back this Thursday with one more video such as this one with tips and tricks. So make sure to leave in the comments what kind of stuff you guys want me to talk about. And I'm gonna spoil it right now. We're gonna have a Blender mini course next Monday. It's gonna be really fun. I've been playing around with Blender for the last couple of months, and if you've never used it before, I think you guys are going to like this one. I'm going to show you a couple of my techniques and things that you can learn about Blender to get up and running, especially if you already have experience in 3D, because it's going to be a really intense crash course. Other than that, remember that our portfolio submissions are still open. They're going to be open throughout this first half of the month. So make sure to check the description down here if you want to submit your portfolio. Leave us your likes, shares, subscribe, and please let us know in the comments what do you think about everything that we're doing here at the Next to the channel. Thank you very much, guys. It's good to be back. It's good to see you face to face. Well, at least virtually, asynchronically, but I know you're there. Some of you having your breakfast or eating some lunch and watching the content. So thank you very much, guys. I'll see you back on the next one. Bye-bye.